Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Is the Ryzen 7 9800 X3D really beneficial for 4K gaming even in those GPU demanding titles? That's what we'll find out today. I'll be upgrading my Ryzen 9 5900X to the 9800 X3D and see if I can get rid of those annoying CPU bottlenecks and bring out the full potential of my RTX 4090. Let's do this. First up is Black Myth Wukong. Here, I'm playing at 4K with DLSS quality upscaling using a mix of cinematic and high settings to optimize for visual fidelity while keeping reasonable performance. The 5900X gets a decent 90 plus FPS on average, but the 1% lows are in the 40s, and GPU utilization is fluctuating a bit, indicating a CPU bottleneck. The 9800 X3D in the same scene gets only slightly better average FPS, but the 1% lows are now in the 70s, giving a much smoother experience. Again, with the 5900X, the average frame rate is in the 90s, but we're still seeing some fluctuations in GPU utilization. The 1% lows are in the 50s and 60s, which I can kind of feel as micro stutters. The 9800 X3D does get a slightly higher average frame rate here, but it's the improvements to the 1% lows that really make the gameplay feel a lot smoother. The GPU utilization is pretty much constant here, indicating not much of a CPU bottleneck. And in general, you always want to be GPU bottlenecked, as that provides a much smoother experience than being CPU bottlenecked. This next scene is much less CPU demanding than the previous one. Here, the average FPS are almost identical, but we do see a slight improvement to the 1% lows and a smoother frame time graph in general. This is a scenario where the 9800 X3D might not provide much performance uplift. And a little later in the chapter, pretty much the same story here. In less CPU demanding scenes, you won't see any improvement to the average frame rate, but the frame time graph does get a bit smoother with slightly better 1% lows. Next up is Horizon Forbidden West. I'm playing at 4K with DLSS quality upscaling with pretty much maxed out graphical settings. The first scene we're gonna look at is the settlement of Plainsong. This is an extremely CPU demanding scene with a bunch of NPCs. This place took me by surprise when I first got here, as I had just experienced the worst stuttering in a long time. That is, until the Burning Shores DLC dropped, of course. The 5900X gets crushed here. While the average FPS might be in the 80s and 90s, the experience was not smooth at all. GPU utilization is fluctuating around 70 to 80%, indicating a CPU bottleneck almost 100% of the time. The 1% lows are in the low 60s, sometimes dropping into the 50s. For some reason, the uneven frame pacing does not play well with the G.SKILL on my monitor, resulting in a very stuttery experience. On the other hand, the 9800 X3D crushed it here. Not only are we getting a much higher average FPS, sometimes upwards of a 20 FPS difference, the improvements to 1% lows and frame pacing also made the experience buttery smooth. That is to be expected when all CPU bottlenecks are removed, as seen from the GPU utilization graph.
Aloy! Plainsong welcomes you.
And did I mention the Burning Shores DLC? Yup. Fleet's End is another settlement with an absurd amount of NPCs. This is the place I experienced the worst stutter in this game, or in recent memory. Here, the 5900X is the bottleneck pretty much 100% of the time, with the GPU usage in the 70s and 80s. The 1% lows dip down to the low 40s, which is below the minimum refresh rate supported by my monitor's G-Sync, causing significant stutters constantly. The 9800X3D gets a whopping 20 to 30 FPS improvement to both the average FPS and 1% lows, almost completely removing all CPU bottlenecks. GPU utilization is pretty much in the high 90s all the time. The experience was so much smoother on the 9800X3D, it almost felt like I was playing a different game.
A taste of the Great Delta right here.
The Ryzen 7 9800X3D is truly a CPU that can bring out the full potential of the RTX 4090. As we've seen just now, even in the most CPU demanding sections of those games, I was able to avoid pretty much all CPU bottlenecks. After the upgrade, the games ran much smoother with much better 1% lows and sometimes even significant boosts to the average frame rates. And as for productivity tasks outside of gaming, well, it might not be the best, but it's still better than my 5900X, so no complaints there. All in all, I'm very satisfied with this upgrade, and if you have an older AM4 non-X3D CPU like me, I think you'll appreciate the performance uplift too. Until next time.